Hey, housekeeper! Take care of this. As soon as I got home, Michael threw his bag at me and gave the order. Lately, I've lost the energy to fight back, so I just picked up the bag from the floor. Scattered papers and a planner were spread out. This chocolate must be his snack for when he gets a little hungry. I picked them up and put them back in the bag. But among them, there was one document that stood out. It was a divorce paper. Moreover, Michael's part was already filled in. At that moment, something inside me crumbled. Ah, I can divorce this man. With that thought, I suddenly felt lighter. And then, I immediately took out a pen from the drawer and started filling out the divorce form. My name is Linda Smith, 35 years old. I work as an administrative assistant at an IT company. Fortunately, I am blessed with good coworkers and a pleasant work environment, and I am happy that I can live without major stress. For me, who quit my first job due to stress from human relations, my current company feels very comfortable. If nothing goes wrong, I'll probably work here for a long time. I've been thinking about this more and more. But I have a problem. I can't even get a boyfriend, let alone get married. It's not that I haven't had any opportunities to meet someone. There were company drinking parties, and blind dates my friends invited me to. I've had many chances to interact with men. In fact, most of my friends are married and even have children. So why not me? Do I have some crucial problem? Every time my friends announce their marriages, I agonize to the point of getting a headache. But then, my chance came. It was at a company drinking party. As usual, I was sipping my drink when a man sat next to me. That was the man who would become my husband, Michael. Linda, right? Eh? How do you know my name? Michael, who suddenly spoke to me. We were in different departments, so we had never talked before. I knew his name and that he was older and joined the company earlier than me, but nothing more. Oh, sorry. I just started talking to you out of the blue. Seeing my surprise, Michael explained why he had started talking to me and introduced himself. Apparently, he had been concerned about me always being alone at company drinks and during breaks. I hadn't thought of myself as being alone that much, but I guess that's how it appeared to others. After that, Michael and I continued our conversation without any awkwardness, thanks in part to the alcohol. At the end of the drinking party, we exchanged contact information, thinking why not. From that day on, Michael and I started talking more at work. We couldn't talk much during work hours, but we chatted during breaks and after work. Sometimes, if we bumped into each other at the nearest station, we'd go to the office together. As we continued this routine, we naturally grew closer and started dating after going out for drinks more often. Eventually, our relationship became known at work. My peers and juniors were quite surprised, as they hadn't expected me to date Michael. Michael remained the same even after we started dating. He was always kind and cheerful. Being with him felt comfortable, and I found myself increasingly attracted to him. I thought Michael seemed happier too, and that made me feel good. About 6 months into our relationship, Michael told me something. Hey. I actually have a kid. A kid? Michael had been married before, but divorced due to personality differences. He had custody and was raising his middle school-aged child as a single father. I've been thinking. I'd like to marry you someday, Linda. I had to tell you before it's too late. Sorry for springing this on you all of a sudden. I was definitely surprised. But I was also happy that Michael was thinking about marrying me and had shared his past and his child's existence, considering our future. Thank you for telling me, I said to Michael. After that, I started meeting Michael's child more often. His name is Noah. I thought he might reject me, being a middle schooler, but Noah accepted me easily. A year later, Michael and I got married. I felt an unprecedented exhilaration and joy at being united with the person I loved. I was truly glad I hadn't turned Michael away at that drinking party. However, my happiness was short-lived. After we got married, Michael's true nature gradually became apparent. After discussing it with Michael, I quit my job. It had been a fun workplace, but I wasn't overly attached to it. I decided to make a fresh start and stay at home. That meant my activities were mostly limited to housework and shopping. Having no particular hobbies, I spent my days without much to immerse myself in. But even I found a hobby eventually. It was painting. I started with pencil drawings out of curiosity, but soon got into watercolors. Before I knew it, my room was filled with watercolor paints, palettes, and brushes. I wonder if this is when Michael started acting strangely. Or maybe it's more accurate to say he started showing his true colors. The first sign of something amiss was when Michael left laundry scattered about. "Hey, could you please put the laundry in the basket?" Sorry. Since we hadn't lived together before marriage, it wasn't surprising that some sloppiness surfaced. I'm not perfect either. In fact, I was happy that Michael, who had always seemed so proper, was showing me this side of himself. It made me feel like we were really married. But no matter how much I asked Michael to put the laundry in the basket, he never seemed to make an effort. In fact, he started saying, "I'm tired from work, you could do it, right?" But as soon as I started doing it, Michael began taking advantage of me. What about dinner? That day too, as soon as he got home, Michael demanded his meal. "I told you, didn't I? Dinner's gonna be late today because Noah's coming home late," I said. "I didn't hear that." "Are you sure you said it?" "I did say it." "No, I definitely didn't hear it." My words fell on deaf ears, and Michael became moody. Dealing with a moody Michael is tough. He would ignore me when I spoke to him, handle things roughly, and stomp around. This behavior was stressing me out. And it bothered me how he would get in a bad mood over minor things. At first, I thought, maybe he's just tired today and tolerated it, but as the days passed, it became unbearable and I started to speak up more. "Hey, didn't I tell you to stop leaving your bag around? Sometimes things fall out, and it's dangerous. If you're gonna say that, then you clean it up. I'm tired from working every day. Unlike you, a stay-at-home wife who does nothing all day." "What? What's with that tone? Anyway, if I don't bring home the bacon, there'd be no food or house for you. I thought we agreed I would quit my job." Yes. You're so annoying." Our conversation went nowhere. Am I saying something wrong? Do I really deserve to be yelled at like this? Every time I argued with Michael, I doubted my own judgment. He told me his divorce from his ex-wife was due to personality differences, but I began to suspect if that was really the case. Maybe the problem was with Michael, and his ex-wife initiated the divorce. Could I bring up divorce myself? The answer is no. I had just finally gotten married, and now, having quit my job, the idea of going back to being single and independent was daunting. And I worried about Noah. The idea of his father divorcing and remarrying must be stressful. For now, I was relieved that Michael didn't raise his voice in front of Noah. It's wrong to think he can do anything in front of me, but it's good that he behaves normally in front of Noah, a basic expectation of a parent, but still, I'm grateful. I should just endure everything. It's my fault for ending up with such a man. Eventually, that thought began to dominate my mind. About 6 months into our marriage, Michael started coming home extremely late. Although there were some overtime at his company, staying out till late night was not typical. Yet Michael would text me, "I'm gonna be late tonight." Might even be past midnight. It's good he contacts me, but what is he doing until late at night? Could he be cheating? Just after we got married? I often thought so. But without proof or certainty, I hesitated. And there was one thing that made me think maybe he wasn't cheating. It was that Michael would bring his colleagues home. Moreover, they were a man and a woman. Their names are apparently Mitch Johnson and Emily Thompson. Mitch is very refreshing, the epitome of a fine young man. Emily is adorable, and even though we're not close in age, it's fun talking to her. Both of them are in the same department as Michael, so they weren't exactly acquaintances. Therefore, I was initially unsure how to interact when they first came over, but as they visited more often, we became friendlier. "Linda, let me help you wash the dishes." "Oh, you don't have to do that." "No, please. I want to help since I'm visiting." "Really? Well then, I'd appreciate your help." Emily often helped with washing the dirty dishes and glasses, and preparing drinks and snacks, while Mitch would talk to or take care of Michael when he was drunk. Honestly, if it weren't for Mitch and Emily coming over, I would have to entertain by myself, and that would be quite a hassle. "Mr. Smith, you're drinking too much. Don't make your wife worry, okay?" It's fine. She's okay with it." Mr. Smith. While Emily and I were in the kitchen, such conversations would sometimes drift over to us. Given his past behavior, I thought Michael really didn't care about me, but Emily surprised me with her comment. It's because of a good relationship between spouses that he can say such things, right? Mr. Smith always talks about you, you know? Saying things like how delicious last night's dinner was, or how you always care for him and make him feel comfortable at home. I couldn't believe Michael was saying such things. Michael talks about me like that? Yes. He talks about home every day. It sounds so fun. I wish I could have a wonderful family like Michael's. Is that so? My feelings were complicated. My home life was anything but fun. I didn't want anyone to aspire to have a family like mine. But I guess Michael had to maintain his image at work. I didn't reveal the truth, just quietly listened to Emily's stories. Well, it's understandable to think it's a happy home if you don't know the inside story. At the dinner table with Michael, Noah would also occasionally join in our conversations, making the atmosphere very pleasant. Mitch and Emily were always kind to Noah. Noah's in middle school, right? Yes, he's in middle school. Wow, so young. You're still young too, aren't you? I found such conversations very enjoyable. On the days Mitch and Emily visited, I felt quite relieved. At first, Michael brought Mitch and Emily over without telling me. Honestly, it was hard to accept at the beginning. But I'm glad I didn't turn them away. However, Michael's attitude didn't change even when Mitch and Emily were there. Being with his subordinates and under the influence of alcohol, he never seemed to be in a bad mood, which was good. But seriously, my wife. She's totally useless. Drunk, Michael began showing his true nature. Mitch and Emily seemed to take his words as a joke. Come on, Mr. Smith. What are you joking about? Your wife is a wonderful person, isn't she? Right, Emily? Yeah, really admirable. No, you shouldn't admire someone like her. You'll regret it in the future, huh? Come on, Michael, you're drunk again. Mitch and Emily seemed to think Michael was disparaging me because he was drunk. Indeed, they probably thought so because they always heard good things about me at work. But I knew they meant no harm. I had become accustomed to Michael speaking ill of me, so I could only smile quietly along with them. Years later, time flew by and Noah graduated from middle school, then high school, and went on to college in the city. After 4 years, he graduated and started working for a local company, renting a house near our home. Initially, I suggested he could live with us, but Noah wanted to experience living alone. I respected his wishes and accepted his decision. Michael's behavior remained the same. By this time, he had been promoted to department head and seemed to have more subordinates than before. He sighed more and became more careless with things. But his attitude towards me didn't get worse. I thought he might take out his accumulated stress on me. As usual, Michael often brought Mitch and Emily over for drinks, and he started coming home after midnight more often than before. I figured he was probably relieving his stress in his own way. Then, after a few more years, I received a call from Noah. Mom, I'm getting married. Married. Congratulations. I couldn't believe Noah was getting married. Time really flies. It seems like just yesterday he was in middle school. He told Michael about it too, and Michael seemed happy. From that day, preparations for the wedding began, including helping with arrangements and meeting his fiancée. Michael was busy, so I was mainly the one helping out. During the planning, we decided to invite Mitch and Emily as they had been a great help. They both attended the wedding, looking very smart. And once again, they took care of a drunk Michael. Honestly, it was embarrassing to have him drunk at such an event. But thankfully, Mitch and Emily handled it well, preventing any awkwardness. Especially Emily, who stayed close to Michael the whole time. They seemed to have a lot of physical contact, but maybe Emily was just a bit drunk. I didn't mind and just watched them. After a few hours, the wedding ended and Michael and I headed home. He must have drunk a lot. Michael slept in the back seat all the way home. When we got home and entered the living room, Michael suddenly threw his bag at me. Ouch! What are you doing? I turned to look at Michael and he was chuckling. Hey, housekeeper. Take care of this. Told so, I looked at the bag on the floor. Exhausted as I was, I didn't argue and just picked up the bag. Scattered around were documents and a planner. Maybe this chocolate is for when he gets a little hungry. I gathered them and put them back in the bag. But then, I found something unusual. It was a divorce paper. Moreover, Michael's part was already filled in. What is this? The moment I saw the divorce papers, time seemed to stop. But then I composed myself. Looking at Michael, he was already asleep, drunk. That's right. Why was I still trying to live with Michael? Noah was employed and married now, so there was no need to stay for the family's sake. Realizing this, something inside me crumbled. Is this his way of saying we should sort out our relationship too? I couldn't stop myself. I took out a pen from the drawer, filled in my part, and left the house with the minimum necessary belongings. I went straight to the office L and submitted the divorce papers. The divorce between Michael and me was finalized. I couldn't believe Michael had prepared divorce papers, wanting to end our marriage. All my efforts over the years felt in vain. Leaving the office, I headed to a motel to stay for a while. After checking in, I went to the room, overwhelmed by exhaustion. Without even taking a bath, I fell asleep. The next morning, it wasn't an alarm or voices that woke me, but my phone ringing. It was Michael's name on the screen. I stepped out of the booth to a quiet spot. Hello? Hey! Linda! Where are you? I'm at a motel. Why are you at a motel? Come back home. Home? We're not a couple anymore. What? Michael must not have expected me to file for divorce. We're not a couple anymore? You know, the divorce papers in your bag, I submitted them. You wanted a divorce, right? Well, now you have it. That divorce paper, it wasn't meant for that. Then what was it for? Michael didn't say anything. I assumed he wanted the divorce. You're not saying anything. Okay, I'll come by to pick up my things later. I hung up. But the calls didn't stop. Even when I was out looking for a room or job, the phone kept ringing. Just when I thought it had stopped, Noah called. I thought he might be calling because of Michael, but I couldn't ignore my son. I immediately answered the phone. Noah? What's up? Mom. Dad told me you haven't come home? Not come home? Well, your father and I are divorced. Didn't you hear? What, divorced? Noah seemed unable to accept the fact that I had filed for divorce. Why? How could you, all of a sudden? Your dad, well, let's meet and talk about it. Can you come to the house today? I decided to call Noah home to explain the divorce to him and Michael in person. Noah agreed, and we met after his work to go home together. Michael was quite surprised to see me back without notice. Hey! Linda! Why did you just leave all of a sudden? I entered the living room and sat on the sofa. Understandably, the other two were quite bewildered. Yeah. Why suddenly decide on divorce? Well, because your dad filled out the divorce papers. What? Dad did. Noah looked at Michael in shock. Michael appeared uncomfortable and evasive. That was not really serious. I saw your signature on it. It seemed pretty serious to me. I pointed out, and Michael looked down. I had evidence that made me believe those divorce papers were meant seriously. You know, you were cheating with Emily Thompson, right? What? I knew about Michael's affair with Emily. It was obvious from how close they were and the excessive physical contact. I had thought it was just because they were drunk. But I couldn't shake off my suspicions. Thinking there might be a chance, I peeked at Michael's phone while he was asleep. There, I found several intimate exchanges with Emily. And even photos from a hotel stay. I quickly took pictures of these evidences with my phone. With photos of them together in a hotel, there's no way he could deny it. Cheating? No, that's not. Don't bother denying it. I have evidence. Evidence? When did you? When you were passed out drunk. When I was passed out. I guess it's good you're the type who falls asleep easily when drunk. Hearing this, Michael looked frustrated. But he soon raised his head and started making excuses. But really, I didn't mean to file those divorce papers. Emily told me to write them. I really didn't want to. I never wanted to divorce you, Linda. Oh really? Wanted to keep me as a convenient housekeeper who does everything you say? A convenient woman who won't complain. That's not it. I really didn't want to divorce you. Michael kept insisting he never wanted the divorce. Indeed, I thought, why would anyone let go of someone who does everything they say? But it didn't matter anymore. Adults should take care of themselves to some extent. No matter what Michael says, the fact that he referred to me as a housekeeper remains. They say the truth comes out when you're drunk, and it sure does. You know, even if you didn't intend to divorce, signing the divorce papers is considered as having that intention, right? What? Really? You're old enough to know this, aren't you? Truly an embarrassing adult. I sighed without thinking. So that's that. Oh, and since you were cheating, I'll be getting alimony from both you and Emily, just so you know. Alimony! But, of course. Don't even think about running away. I'll consult a lawyer and make sure you face the consequences. Michael probably never imagined it would come to this. If he hadn't thrown his bag at me after the wedding, maybe things wouldn't have ended up like this. But then again, cheating and throwing bags at people is questionable behavior in the first place. It's a stark reminder of how one action can drastically change the course of your life. Afterward, at Noah's suggestion, I decided to move in with him in his house. I was worried about being a burden, but he said, "No way. My wife likes you a lot, and I think she'd be happy to live with you." So I gratefully accepted his offer. I packed up my belongings from the house I'd no longer return to, with Noah's help. I packed my clothes and watercolor painting tools into some cases and headed to Noah's house. Even until the last moment, Michael kept pleading, "Please reconsider the divorce. I'm begging you." But what was he thinking now? Cheating on me clearly showed he had no feelings left for me. I was genuinely relieved to be divorced from Michael. Later, I consulted a lawyer. Apparently, I could claim much more alimony than I expected due to the length of our marriage. I called Michael and Emily to the office, confirmed their affair, and presented the evidence. Cheating. Emily was initially confused and denied it, but after seeing the evidence, she admitted it. She should have just admitted it from the start. I had thought of Emily as a genuinely nice person, so learning about the affair and the attempt to cover it up was quite shocking. By that time, Michael had resigned himself to the situation. "I'm really sorry. I'll pay the alimony." If only he had regretted his actions from the beginning. In the end, whether Emily was influenced by Michael or regretted her actions, she agreed to pay alimony and listened to the lawyer's explanation about it. Finally, they both apologized to me. Whether they truly regretted their actions or it was just for show, I couldn't tell. That was for them to know. But I hoped this experience would make them reconsider their actions and how much they hurt me. After the discussion, I returned home. Noah's wife welcomed me with a smile, which lightened my fatigue a bit. Since the divorce, I started working part-time near Noah's house. I was anxious about working again after so long, but the people at work were so kind that my anxiety soon faded. I'm getting along well with Noah and his wife. Lately, I've been enjoying cooking with her. The divorce is settled, and I've received the alimony. I thought everything was resolved. But then, one day, an unexpected encounter stirred things up again. It was Mitch. While shopping at the supermarket, I saw Mitch, likely returning from work. He noticed me and happily came over. "Hello. Long time no see, Mitch. It's been a while." I greeted Mitch and we chatted for a bit. We talked about recent happenings, work stuff, and what we were planning for dinner. But something about Mitch seemed off. He wasn't his usual bright self, almost desperate. Curious, I casually brought up a topic of conversation. Mitch. You seem a bit down, are you okay?" It seemed like I hit the nail on the head. As I waited for Mitch's response, he slowly began to speak. Recently, my girlfriend and I broke up." "Oh, really?" "That girlfriend was Emily, who used to come over with me." "What? Emily?" "But Emily was..." I stopped myself mid-sentence. But of course, Mitch seemed curious. Did something happen? Since he asked, I told him about Emily and Michael, and how Michael and I got divorced. Then Mitch exclaimed, "What? You got divorced?" "Yes. We've been divorced for a while now. So that's why." I was wondering why I wasn't invited over anymore. Also, Mr. Smith. He still talks about his family at work, you know? He does. I couldn't believe Michael was still talking about us. I instinctively held my head in my hands. I kind of realized Mr. Smith and Emily might be involved. They were always too close. You thought the same, Mitch? Yes. Well. Mitch looked down awkwardly but soon looked up and said, I can't forgive Emily and Mr. Smith. I'll report this to my supervisor. I was surprised that Mitch had noticed Emily and Michael's affair. I thought I was the only one who knew. We parted ways that day, and he promised to let me know what happened later. A few weeks later, I got a text from Mitch. He must have reported Michael and Emily to his supervisor. Curious about the outcome, I immediately opened the email. It turned out Michael and Emily both received pay cuts, and Michael was also demoted, now working like a regular employee. Following Mitch's revelation, the affair between Michael and Emily became known throughout the company, and they were looked down upon. While Michael was still at the company, Emily, perhaps feeling uncomfortable, resigned. I was surprised Michael hadn't quit, but perhaps he realized he couldn't get a stable job elsewhere. I wondered how long he could keep it up. A year after the divorce and hearing from Mitch, he was still at the company. Michael and Emily continued to pay alimony, so they must be managing somehow. Mitch was recognized for his hard work and got promoted. Despite Michael once caring for his subordinate Mitch, his actions led to him being Mitch's subordinate. I wondered how that felt for him. I might be a bit mean for wanting to ask him that. Now, I'm living with Noah and his family, still working part-time at the supermarket. I started with stocking shelves, but now I'm learning to make deli items and use the cash register. It's nice to have new challenges every day. I'm getting along very well with Noah and his wife. We're planning to bake some sweets together today. I'm grateful for my kind workplace and loving family, and continue to live my life with appreciation. Finally got rid of that old man, huh? The tasteless man burst out laughing, spitting as he spoke. That hateful person, who I couldn't stand to even look at, was my brother. He hadn't come to the wake or funeral, and now he returns home, not to pay respects to my father, but to spew such vile words. I couldn't tolerate it. How can you say such a thing? I yelled, appalled at his crassness. But my brother, unfazed, continued to sneer. That stubborn old man never listened to me, good riddance. Now this house will finally be mine. Owning a house means you've made it, right? Apparently, my brother had returned, not to greet our father, but to lay claim to the house. Throughout our father's illness, he never helped, only asking for money. Having a family to support, a rent-free house must seem very valuable to him. That's why I couldn't help but laugh to myself. You think you'll get this house after all the trouble you've caused and not even attending the funeral? Noticing my mocking smile, my brother frowned unhappily. What? Of course, it's mine. Did he leave a will or something? He glanced at the envelope in my hand. Assuming it contained the will. Too bad for you. Even if he didn't leave me anything in the will, the law dictates how much a child can inherit from a parent. If I'm not satisfied with what's in there, I'll sue right away. He said, smirking again. Then he dismissively waved his hand at me. Get out of here. This house is mine now. At that moment, I burst into laughter. Wiping tears from the corner of my eyes, I looked at my bewildered brother and said, Oh, it really did turn out just like Dad said. I'm Victoria. 3 years ago, I married a slightly older man, and we've been both working since. It's been 10 years since my mother passed away, and my father, who now lives alone in our spacious family home, has recently become weaker in his legs. To support him, I convinced my husband to move in with him. I do have an older brother. But I never thought of asking him to take care of my father. My brother, 6 years my senior, seemed like a serious soccer player until elementary school, but his behavior worsened during his rebellious phase due to bad influences from friends. He would stay out late, ignoring not just our gentle mother but also our strict father, and often hung out with bad company. I was in early elementary school back then and didn't like my brother much because he rarely came home and was cold to me when he did. His bad associations didn't seem to end even years later. When my brother was a university student, he caused major trouble involving a woman. My father even had to apologize to the woman's family. Though I wasn't told the specifics, I had a pretty good idea, given my brother's rough manner towards me. As his sister, I could have retaliated, but romance complicates things. I worried about the woman and despised my brother for treating her so poorly. Unrepentant, my brother, upon father's return from apologizing, didn't apologize himself but yelled, "Why are you doing this without listening to me? You're a failure as a parent. If you treat me like this, it's no wonder I turned out bad." My mother tried to calm the situation, but my angry father retorted, "How can you say that after hurting a woman? You're no longer my son, and you're incapable of thinking of others. Don't show your face here again." My brother left, saying fine by me, but a month later, a voice message arrived. It seems my father stopped sending my brother money for tuition and living expenses right after he left. Worried, my mother wanted to call back, but my father angrily refused, and I agreed to ignore it. The calls stopped after a week, and we lost track of my brother. Later, my mother fell ill. She fought hard but passed away. She mentioned my brother until the end, so I tried to find him in secret, hiding it from my father. But with no common friends, I couldn't reach him in time for her last moments. However, my brother suddenly returned home soon after. I was surprised but told him about my mother. Well, my brother responded briefly after hearing of my mother's passing, but the next moment, he said, "Hey, tell Dad to lend me some money. It's his fault I dropped out of college and couldn't get a decent job, so he should take responsibility." I was infuriated by his insensitivity, demanding money from my father who was already weakened by the loss of my mother, and I yelled at my brother, sending him away. My brother talked only of his hardships, seemingly oblivious to why my father had disowned him. I thought that someone like him, even if he was my brother, should not be allowed near our beloved father. However, my brother would show up at our family home every few months, attempting to see my father. It was okay when I was there, but I became anxious when I started working. My father's mobility worsened year by year, so he spent more time alone at home, only leaving when he felt well enough to go to work. I repeatedly told him to always keep the doors locked to avoid contact with my brother. "I can handle him with one hand," my father would say with a laugh. But I worried about the potential harm my brother could cause, given their age difference. Fortunately, my brother's visits became less frequent, and when I got married and began living at the family home with 3 of us, the worry decreased. Yet, considering the worst-case scenario, my husband and I had extensive discussions and decided to prioritize supporting my father's life. "If I become unable to move freely, I'll live in a facility," my father had said, considering our feelings, but I insisted on taking care of him at home. I tried to minimize the burden on my husband, using day services effectively while I was at work. But, after losing my mother, my father continued to weaken, seeming joyless and withdrawn. He gently refused my invitations to his hobbies like fishing or chess, spending all day indoors. His health deteriorated, and 3 years after we started living together, he passed away. Caught up in funeral arrangements and inheritance procedures, a week passed in a blink. Each time I disposed of one of my father's belongings, it felt like erasing evidence of his existence, so I hesitated many times, but I knew it wasn't good to keep them forever, so I sorted through my feelings. Having worked non-stop both day and night, I took a day off to rest at home. As I lay in bed, recovering from sleep deprivation, I heard the sound of a large truck stopping nearby. This area is full of narrow alleys, but is it okay? I wondered, but then I heard a click from the front door and jolted up, startled. Could someone have entered by mistake? Or a burglar? Even in broad daylight with people around? My husband always locks the door when he leaves for work, so it shouldn't be open. My heart was pounding so loud I thought it might leap out of my mouth as I approached the entrance. Through the frosted glass of the door, I saw 3 silhouettes. Before I knew it, the sliding door was opened with a rattle, and I was faced with both familiar and unfamiliar people. Good, the lock isn't broken. What, you're still here? Well, that's fine, I guess. It would be troublesome to be accused of breaking and entering when no one's around. My brother muttered incomprehensibly. Standing beside him was a woman around his age and a small child. Though I had never met them, they were undoubtedly his wife and son. Despite being our first encounter, they looked at me suspiciously without a smile. "We have movers waiting outside, so I'll greet you later." "Hey, help us move in. This is a chance for you to bond with my wife and son, and it'll make our move quicker." Two birds with one stone. What? Moving in? I doubted my ears. The large truck I had heard earlier seemed to belong to movers carrying my brother's belongings. My brother smirked unpleasantly, starting to talk boastfully. "I saw Dad's name in the newspaper. Finally, that old man kicked the bucket. We celebrated as a family. He was a lousy father, but as his son, I thought it's only right to inherit the house. I plan to live here from today. You shouldn't stay here any longer, so leave immediately." While I stood there in shock, my brother's wife quickly entered and began unloading their belongings. The child, perhaps excited by the large house, started running around. "Wait, I haven't heard anything about this, and I can't just hand over the house like that," I said, and my brother burst into laughter. "Hand over? Dad's dead, so it's my house now. Or did you think caring for him meant you'd inherit?" I saw through that. It's all in vain, the very definition of wasted effort. You might think I'm stealing from you, but traditionally, the son inherits. Understand? If you have time to argue, then leave immediately. He vented his frustration on me, apparently holding a grudge for not letting him near my father. At the continued insults even after my father's death, my patience snapped. And I was about to retort when I heard a cracking sound behind me, so I ran to the source. And came upon a scene where his son was standing and at his feet lay a picture frame containing my father's portrait, fallen face down. "What are you doing?" I shouted, and the startled son tried to flee. "Don't step on the glass, it's dangerous," I said firmly. It seemed that my brother's wife heard my shouting and came running, glaring at me fiercely. "What's wrong with you, yelling at someone else's child like that? Are you insane?" she accused me. Wanting to quickly restore my father's picture to its place, I regained some composure and began picking up the fragments of the frame. All the while, my brother's wife, holding the crying child, continued to hurl abuse at me. "Living in your parents' house even though you're married, you must have had a nice life. We never got any support from your father because you were in the way. Planning to inherit the house after just a few years of living together and taking care of things is utterly ridiculous." She spat at me like a machine gun. "You probably didn't even take proper care of your father, did you? You just left him in a facility and relaxed with your husband. I heard your father had quite a bit of savings, and you made him pay most of the living expenses. The audacity of a younger sister like you. Normally, the son should be respected, right? I have a growing son, and I've been married for over 3 years, so as the wife of his son, I have more right than you. Just leave quickly. I might forgive you for yelling at my son if you disappear now." Despite the fact that the child had broken an important portrait, there was no apology whatsoever, and I sighed at the sight of my brother's wife comforting the crying child, who was clueless about what had happened. For a moment, I paused, relieved that the child hadn't been injured, and pondered what to do next. If I didn't stop my brother and his family from continuing to bring their belongings into our family home, it would cause more trouble later. "I need you to listen to me for a moment." "What? After ignoring everything else, now you want me to listen to you? I didn't expect you to be this selfish. Dad and Mom must be crying in heaven. I won't be the chief mourner, but I'll attend the funeral and listen to you then. For now, I'm busy, so hurry up and pack your things," my brother said without even looking at me, scrutinizing the house as if appraising it for valuable items. But there was nothing of value left. As I pondered, a laugh escaped me involuntarily. My brother didn't miss my words. "What's so funny? Are you mocking me?" "Yes, I am. Because it's just like Dad said it would be." I could feel the tense atmosphere. But I wasn't intimidated. "I had intended to give you money the next time you came begging, but you never listened. Here, take this and read it carefully," I said, handing my brother a brown envelope. He snatched it, looking puzzled. "Writing me out of the will won't work. The law dictates the share of inheritance. I'll sue you immediately." As he saw the words of the will in the envelope, my brother smiled triumphantly and unfolded the letter. It was indeed a copy of my father's will. About 2 months before he died, sensing his time was near, my father had prepared the will secretly. He was frugal and had left a substantial inheritance for both of us. The breakdown was almost equal between my brother and me, with slightly more for me due to the caregiving. However, it wasn't drastically less for my brother. The amount would allow for a comfortable living if one didn't indulge in luxuries. But seeing my sister-in-law today, dressed in brand-name skirt, boots, necklace, and bag, it was clear they led a far from frugal life. Her attire, too dressy for a moving day, hinted at her lack of common sense. "What? What does this mean?" my brother exclaimed, tearing the paper into pieces and throwing it on the floor. He had torn not just the copy of the will, but also copies of registry documents and a handwritten letter from my father. "The house is already sold? That's impossible." Before he passed away, my father had informed me about his plans for the house. He would come to claim the house as soon as he heard of my death. So, I had already been making arrangements to transfer it to Simon. He just turned 20 this year and about to start a business. He is a promising young man. I had been very fond of him and wanted to help him out. I left something else for you since I couldn't leave you the house. I want your husband and you to live a happy life together." Simon was one of Dad's nephews. Dad got along well with all his siblings, and I often saw Simon around. A solid, kind-hearted young man, much like my uncle. I was fine with Simon inheriting the property and happily accepted Dad's decision. Simon was set to move in soon, and it was agreed that my husband and I could stay until then. I was already in the process of gradually packing. My brother, completely unaware of this, turned red with anger and shouted, "Who would be happy to buy such an old house? You're probably just giving it away to some relative. Who's getting this house? Tell me now so I can sort it out." The letter from Dad only mentioned selling the house. I had blacked out the personal information on the registry documents, which turned out to be a wise decision. Before I could respond, my brother's wife snapped at him, "What are you going to do now, after packing everything? Why didn't you confirm this earlier? You're really stupid." This seemed to hurt my brother's pride, and he grew even angrier. "You know who inherited this house, don't you? Contact them now, and either get this house back or give us your new house," he demanded illogically. "Why would that even happen?" "Yes, we're moving into a new place, but it only has space for us to live," I replied calmly, but my brother was too panicked to listen. "This kind of important matter is usually discussed with the whole family. Aren't you unsatisfied too? Inheriting the house to someone other than us?" He rambled on, making no sense. I lost my patience. "What? Don't compare me with you. I heard about this directly from Dad and agreed to it. You've been disowned for a long time and never even came to apologize, so you have no right to say anything now." My brother bit his lip in frustration, then continued. "Then give me half of the money from selling the house. We are the only heirs. I have the right to inherit too. That amount is included in your inheritance share." The sale proceeds were partly used for Dad's treatment and the funeral. After settling all the expenses, what's left was divided in half. "It can't just be this much." My brother fumed, his face red and sweaty. I sighed at his rage. "It's an old house, as you yourself said. It didn't sell for a high price, and funerals aren't free, so this is what it amounts to." My brother fell silent at my words. However, his wife burst out again. "This isn't what I heard. I decided to marry you because you said you were the wealthy eldest son of a rich family. You lied to me." Astonishingly, my brother had been boasting to his wife. It was one thing for his wife to decide to marry him thinking he was wealthy, but my brother's nature of exaggerating himself hadn't changed since childhood. Not wanting to escalate into a domestic argument, I tried to reason with my brother internally. But you haven't been left with nothing by Dad. Just save that inheritance, work steadily, and eventually, you can build your own home. My brother grimaced silently. And his wife kept frowning while playing with her smartphone. So, we can't go back home now? My brother's son muttered quietly. What do you mean we can't go back home? Suddenly, my brother lunged at his son, so I instinctively shielded the boy. Don't lay a hand on the child. What's this about having no home? I asked again. My brother's unexpected reply came. I got fired from my job. That's why we couldn't pay rent and came here. He embezzled company money. It's so embarrassing to get caught. But he said we'd have plenty of inheritance from his father, so I followed him. Now look at this mess. I'm the victim here. This is all because of your reckless spending. Don't you have any sense of remorse? Blaming me? It's you who can't earn enough to support your wife and child properly. It just shows you're incompetent. They both started arguing, completely forgetting about their child. I wondered if the child always lived in such an environment. It made sense why he wasn't properly disciplined. Realizing that my brother hadn't changed his opportunistic ways, I tried to get them out of the house. Then, his wife clung to me, begging. Look, we're really in a bad situation now. We don't even have a home. Don't you feel sorry for my son? We were completely deceived by your brother. I'm not asking to live in your new house, but can you share some of the inheritance with me? I want to buy clothes for my son's upcoming birthday. My brother's wife, seemingly producing tears on cue, began to cry. Indeed, the child's clothes were slightly too short. But this led me to a question. Is your son's birthday coming up soon? Yes, he's turning 4 next month. My brother and his wife got married a little over 3 years ago. This was something she had just mentioned, so there was no mistake. That meant if their son was turning 4 next month, he must have been conceived before they got married. Did you marry my brother right after you met him? What? Yeah, but what's that got to do with anything? I was almost certain now. If her story was true, she would have been pregnant before meeting my brother. As I was about to ask more, she turned pale, realizing her slip-up. Why are you asking that all of a sudden? He's our child, so don't say weird things. My brother, noticing her agitation, reacted. Why are you looking like that? Got something to hide? From my perspective, it was unbelievable that my brother hadn't noticed her pregnant state at the time. He never showed interest in anything other than himself. Maybe it wasn't so strange that he hadn't noticed. However, as the silence from his wife grew more tense, my brother began to lash out at her. Then, she blurted out, "It's because you lied to me. My son is from someone I met at a nightclub I used to go to, but I chose you because I thought you had a better income." Taking her son, who was on the verge of tears, to another room. I called the police, requesting their intervention to apprehend my brother and his family and to ensure the temporary protection of her son. Within minutes, the police arrived and took my brother and his wife, who were causing a disturbance without any concern for the neighbors. A child welfare officer accompanied them to ensure appropriate care for her son. Some time later, I learned that my brother and his wife had divorced. My brother had filed for alimony against her, as she confessed to having deceived him about the child's paternity. However, she was nearly penniless. She sold all her branded items but still struggled to make ends meet, working tirelessly from dawn to dusk, leaving her son in the care of her parents. Despite his precarious situation, my brother shamelessly returned to our family home. I don't have any money, so can you give me a little support? I can't work because of the severe mental stress from my ex-wife. Every time he came asking for help, my husband turned him away. Unlike my scrawny brother, my husband used to be the captain of the rugby team, so he has a rugged face and a muscular build. Faced with a man of such appearance, my brother seemed to have no choice but to leave sheepishly, and for a while, there was no contact with him. However, when the time came to transfer our family home to my cousin Simon, my brother appeared and confronted Simon, accusing him of stealing his home. My husband restrained him and handed him over to the police. Fortunately, Simon wasn't seriously hurt. My brother received a substantial prison sentence, freeing us from any fear of his return. Grateful for the new beginning, Simon thanked us as we prepared to move into our new life. My husband and I decided to save the entirety of my father's inheritance and continue living modestly. The new house we built isn't big enough to boast about to others, but it's a satisfying home filled with both of our personal touches, so it seems we'll have even more enjoyable days ahead. Don't come back home, I'm with her. Do whatever you want with the baby. Over my husband's voice, I hear the laughter of a young woman. She must be the one he's cheating with. Jason, you're choosing to spend time with me. Obviously, I'm way better than this old lady. Plus, I don't want any babies. They're noisy and wrinkly. I don't see what's cute about them at all. The audacity of this woman, insulting not just me but my baby too. I'm trembling with rage. Trying to keep calm, I respond, okay, thinking they are done for. Thinking you'll regret this, I muster the strength in my still weak postpartum body to stand firmly and glare at my husband. Jason, are you really okay with this? Living without me and our baby? I ask for confirmation one last time. I don't want to talk, but I need to be sure. Yeah. I even got the divorce papers. I've filled out my part. Just sign your section and consult a lawyer. I nod in understanding. Then, this is goodbye forever. I'm crying, but they are tears of relief. It's finally over. I'll never return to this house. I'm Erica Johnson, 32, currently on maternity leave from a multinational corporation. I'm still helping out with remote work, almost as much as before my leave. I spend fulfilling days taking care of my daughter and working. I never thought I'd find it easier without my husband. We met at a friend's wedding after party. Fresh from a breakup and feeling lonely, we quickly got close and married before I turned 30. Love is blind indeed. After marrying, I slowly learned about his infidelity and drinking issues. He often spent nights out drinking and partying. Even though it was within his budget, I couldn't comprehend it so early in our marriage. We're newlyweds. I want a sweet married life. I told him, fed up. His unapologetic reply was, "What are you talking about now? We used to drink and go clubbing together. You knew I liked drinking, and that I'm popular with the ladies." Indeed, he was popular. He was kind and attentive, giving expensive chocolates for birthdays and lending an ear to girls' troubles. He was nice to everyone, including men at work. He'd always get calls on his phone at home, from both men and women. He'd leave me to reply to texts, even if we were chatting or watching a movie. I wished he'd at least put his phone on silent when we were together. His constant texting was sigh-inducing. Consequently, people would say things like, "You're lucky to have such a kind husband." Which could be jealousy on my part, but I couldn't help wanting him to be kinder to me. He was always getting invitations. His once-weekly outings turned into weekend activities too. His phone was always buzzing with invites. Sometimes even from night workers asking him to accompany them. Sometimes he'd come home smelling like perfume. I confronted him angrily, but he brushed it off, saying, "The girls at the bar got too close. There's nothing more to it." No matter how much I asked him to stop, he never did, and I eventually gave up. When he was home, he'd help with chores and be nice to me, balancing out my frustration with his philandering. Then I found out I was pregnant. I wanted to enjoy our time as a couple a bit longer, but the thought of having a baby was exciting. When I told him, he responded, "Really? Are you sure it's mine? Not that you cheated, but it's hard to believe." I was hoping for more excitement from him. I expected him to cheer. And what did he mean by questioning if it's his? I've only been commuting between work and home, never even having meals with male colleagues. "Jason, aren't you happy? I didn't expect to get pregnant so soon, but I'm thrilled at the thought of our baby." I asked, worried. "No, it's just a slip of the tongue. Of course, I'm happy. You're honest, Erica. I know you wouldn't mess around with other guys." He seemed to be hastily covering up his words. It even sounded like he was mocking me for not dating other men. I felt distrustful of my husband's words, but I chose to take his belief in my seriousness as a positive and stopped arguing. A few days later, he seemed to accept my pregnancy, started helping more actively around the house, concerned about my health. I was grateful for his help as I couldn't move as before due to morning sickness. However, he didn't cut back on his nights out at bars and clubs. His lifestyle remained unchanged. I felt a growing gap between us, as he showed no signs of change. I had heard that women become mothers while carrying their children, but men become fathers as they raise their babies. I optimistically hoped my husband would become more family-oriented once our baby was born. I switched to remote work, allowing me to work more comfortably from home. As my morning sickness eased, I returned to my busy routine of housework and my job. But as my belly grew, my movements slowed, and there were more things I couldn't do. My husband, saying he didn't want to burden me, began going out again. It was nice to prepare just what I liked, but I really wanted to have slow conversations about our coming baby. I didn't want to argue like we did early in our marriage, so I turned a blind eye to the women's perfume and messages on social media. Perhaps I was fooling myself into thinking it was just harmless fun. Always the optimist, I convinced myself that even if he was a playboy now, he would become a good father as our child grew. Looking back, he might have been laughing at my naivety. Maybe even messaging his affair partner right in front of me. I never thought about such things, just went on with my daily life. One day, a neighbor asked, "Lately, I've seen your husband walking with a younger sister? She dresses very young." "I don't have a sister." "That must be his sister. I'll ask him about it." I get along with my sister-in-law and often chat with her on social media. We had exchanged messages the day before, but she hadn't mentioned anything. Could my husband be cheating? I had thought he was just being sociable and playful, but maybe it was something else. Pretending to be outgoing, he might be dating someone specific. It was my first suspicion, but I couldn't shake off the anxiety that it might be true. I made several phone calls. That night, my husband returned home late as usual. Holding back my urge to confront him, I only said, "Our baby will be here soon, try to spend more time at home." I was experiencing frequent contractions and wanted his encouragement if labor started. The thought of having my alcohol-scented husband nearby was embarrassing and disheartening. He muttered, "I understand," and headed to the bathroom. As I walked to the bedroom, a warm liquid flowed around my feet. It took a moment, but I realized my water had broken. I tried to wake my husband, but he wouldn't stir from his drunken sleep. I called a taxi, crying, and went to the hospital in the middle of the night. The next morning, I saw a message from my husband on my phone, but I was in no condition to respond. I called him after safely delivering our baby that night. "Congratulations. That's great. I suddenly have a business trip tomorrow, so I can't visit. Can I ask your mom to help with things?" His response lacked any excitement about our newborn. Normally, one would visit their baby even if it's late. Exhausted, I calmed myself, looking at my peacefully sleeping daughter. My mother was rushing here to see her granddaughter, so I'd talk to her when she arrived. 4 days later, I was discharged from the hospital. My husband's responses were vague despite my daily messages, so I assumed he was busy with work and social commitments. I asked my mom to pick me up and went home. The concierge congratulated me on my childbirth as I showed off my daughter. As I opened the door to my home, I heard a sweet female voice inside. I almost dropped my baby in shock. Seeing my mom's face, I could tell she was pale with shock. "Jason, I'm home." "What are you doing?" "No need to ask, I can see for myself," I said, flinging open the bedroom door. My husband and his mistress jumped in surprise. Anticipating trouble, my mom stayed at the entrance, holding my baby. "Why are you back? Aren't you supposed to be discharged tomorrow?" My husband retorted, trying to deflect and getting angry. "I messaged and called you several times. You must have been too busy enjoying yourself with your phone off." I thought back to the day the neighbor mentioned seeing him, never imagining it would come to catching them in the act. I felt nauseous. His cold voice cut through. "Don't come back home, I'm with her. Do whatever you want with the baby." Overlapping his voice, I could hear a young woman's laughter. It was the voice of his mistress. Jason, you're choosing to spend time with me. Obviously, I'm way better than this old lady. Plus, I don't want any babies. They're noisy and wrinkly. I don't see what's cute about them at all. The nerve of this woman, insulting not just me but my baby too. I was shaking with anger. Trying to keep calm, I respond, okay, thinking they are done for. Thinking you'll regret this, I struggled to stand firmly and glare at my husband, my body still weak from childbirth. Jason, are you really okay with this? Living without me and our child? I needed one last confirmation. I didn't want to talk, but it was necessary to be sure. Yeah. I even got the divorce papers. I've filled out my part. Just sign your section and consult a lawyer. I nodded in understanding. Then, this is goodbye forever. I was crying, but they were tears of relief. It was finally over. I would never return to this house. After that, I stayed with my mom. She said, it's like coming home for the birth, don't worry about it, so I could rely on her without feeling guilty. I had no financial worries. My salary from the company was more than enough, allowing me to take a comfortable maternity leave. My dad was also planning to come soon to see his grandchild. My parents usually live overseas and stay in this house in the States when they have business here. Gradually getting used to taking care of the baby and feeling better, I started the divorce proceedings. I had already been preparing, moving my belongings out bit by bit before giving birth. The lawyer assured me they would handle everything so that it wouldn't be disadvantageous to me. Just when I was about to contact him, I received a call from my husband. Hey, what's this about? I was told to get out of this house. He sounded panicked. Well, that makes sense. That place belongs to my company. If I'm not living there, you have to move out. I work for a multinational real estate company. So they let me rent an available property at a low cost. I didn't know that. They showed me around, and we chose this place. I never thought it was your company's. Indeed, we had looked at several apartments with a real estate agent. He hadn't realized it was my company's property. I should have been clearer. It's our property, so they rented it to us cheaply. Normally, the rent would be at least $4,000 a month. I could hear him gasping on the phone. What? $4,000? You're kidding! He sounded incredulous. It's true. They gave me a deal because it's me, including utilities for $3,000. But of course, they've stopped deducting it from my salary. His girlfriend's voice could be heard in the background, confused. She probably thought he was paying for the apartment and everything else. She never imagined her current lifestyle was unsustainable without me. Wait a minute. If I pay that much rent, I'll barely have half my salary left. He was slowly realizing his situation. By the way, I've been storing your leftover stuff. Pay me for storage. Let's start with $10,000. If you don't get it soon, there'll be interest. I'll start counting until all the stuff is out of this place. I was dismayed to realize how cunning my husband was. I had moved all my and the baby's clothes and essentials here, but not all the furniture. I'll be there right away. Just wait, I said, hanging up the phone. I quickly told my mom about the conversation and decided to return to my former home. Of course, she would come with me. I contacted the lawyer and a few other places before leaving my mom's house. About half an hour later, we arrived at our former home. My husband, looking grumpy, showed up. You're back. Come in quickly. My mom and I entered the house together. The inside was a mess. I'm not very meticulous, but I had tidied up the house, anticipating bringing the baby home. Now, it was unrecognizable, with beer cans, plastic bottles, empty meal boxes, and trash bags overflowing from the garbage can. Despite having a dishwasher, dirty dishes were piled high in the sink. It's tough without you. Won't you come back? Jason started. But you told me not to come back, Jason. I glared at him. Then the lawyer and the movers arrived. Thank you for coming. Movers, please take most of the appliances. Most of the appliances were originally bought by me. My husband had only old stuff from his student days, so I replaced them gradually.
What do you mean? How am I supposed to live?
My husband exclaimed, shocked by the movers covering and preparing to take the items.
Hey, what are you doing? How are we supposed to live?
His mistress emerged from the back of the house, yawning and looking around sleepily.
Well, I bought most of the things here. Jason just contributed to the living expenses, the rest he spent as he pleased. So, if I take these, you'll have to get your own,
I said with a smile to his mistress.
The lawyer will explain the details. If I take care of my daughter, Jason will need to pay child support. So, Jason, you will be asked for child support. And about the storage fee for these appliances you mentioned on the phone, since you were using them, we'll call it even.
Their faces drained of color at his words.
Also, the rent and utilities payments for this house have stopped, so you'll soon receive an eviction notice. The water, electricity, and gas will be cut off as well. You're moving out, so you'll have to pay for that.
They were shocked to realize Jason had to pay child support and about $10,000 for rent and utilities, blaming each other for the payment. I had hired a private investigator as soon as I began suspecting my husband of cheating. Reflecting on it, that was the most difficult time, especially being pregnant. The shock was terrifying. It might even have caused my water to break. I didn't have time to investigate myself, so while in the hospital for childbirth, I called the concierge and asked about my husband. Reluctantly, they revealed they had seen him returning with other women several times. I also obtained security camera footage through my company, showing the two of them getting cozy in the elevator. Plus, the investigator provided photos of them entering a hotel. I made sure they couldn't escape. I had been waiting for the right moment to confront my husband, and since he showed his true colors, I decided to deal with them calmly and thoroughly, like today. As my belongings were moved out and Jason and his mistress argued loudly, I sat on the sofa, which would be moved last. Suddenly, the door burst open and a large figure collided with Jason, sending him flying across the room. We were all stunned when he was thrown again. What's going on? Jason stood up, just as this large figure, my father, started shouting loudly. Then my brother entered. Both my father and brother are tall and well-built, almost bear-like. My biological father died in a traffic accident shortly after I was born. My mom, while working hard in real estate, met my current father, a former American football player. They started dating when he flirted with her, and they remarried when I was in middle school. I initially struggled to bond with him, but seeing how much he cared for my mom, I fully supported their marriage. Thus, I have a half-brother. I was happily surprised to see my father and brother since I hadn't seen them since I got married. When my father and brother, with their faces red with anger, started yelling, the intimidation was immense. My husband lost all color in his face, sweating profusely and trembling while listening to them. His mistress tried to sneak out of the house but was caught and brought back by my mother. My husband couldn't get a word in against their yelling. Then my in-laws arrived. Yes, before coming here, I had contacted the lawyer, the movers, and my in-laws. They were unaware of the situation and had been looking forward to seeing their grandchild. When they learned about their son's actions, the joy of meeting their grandchild vanished, replaced by fury. Jason, what on earth are you doing? We've been eagerly waiting to see our grandchild, and you're living here with your mistress. My father-in-law was beyond disappointed, at a loss for words. He apologized to me, dragging his son. My mother-in-law nearly fainted. With a triumphant look, I said, Jason, it's enough. I have my daughter and lots of hope. I can look forward to life. Just make sure to pay child support. You can keep living in this house if you can afford the rent. When I confirmed my husband's affair, I was emotionally devastated, but what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? I realized I had to protect this child and show her only the beautiful things in life, trying to forget my anger and hatred. So, I said my piece and watched as my father and brother punished him, deciding to let go of the past. Sensing my mood, my father and brother hugged me, and we left the apartment together with my mother and baby. Later, my husband, of course, moved out of the apartment. He's living in a more modest place now. When his mistress heard he was moving out of the luxury apartment, she dumped him. It seemed she was only after a handsome guy living in a high-end place. When he asked her to believe in him and move to the apartment, she said, "When the money goes, so do I," and left him. If he lives in a nice apartment and buys her various things, she'll be with him, but if he doesn't, she doesn't want him. It was a typical "if it's not beneficial, it's disposable" attitude. Her parents sent an apology letter. But I never received a direct apology from her. It made me think how cunning she can be. As for my husband, his life at work changed drastically. No one invites him out, and he has no women to confide in. Even if invited, he can't afford to go out due to his debt for child support. He had his fun. Now it's time for him to work hard. I could have continued living with my mother, but my father invited me to overseas, and I decided to accept. I can work remotely, and it'll be great for my daughter to grow up in nature. She'll learn a different culture and have many diverse experiences. As I refresh at my father's house, I'm contemplating my future. Excited for new encounters, I'm heading to the park with my daughter today. My name is Erica Johnson. I married my husband, who is 10 years older than me, 2 years ago, and we've been living together with our stepchildren, making a family of 4. My daughter, who is 4 years old, and my husband's stepson, a 15-year-old middle schooler. The stepson, named Michael, is a troubled teen and has started to bully my daughter, Emily. One day, out of the blue, Michael punched Emily in the stomach, making her cry. When I rushed over after hearing Emily's cries, I found Michael taking photos, seemingly amused by the situation.
What are you doing?
Well, her face is just so funny. I barely hit her, and she's crying like a baby. What a crybaby. When I asked Emily, it seemed Michael had punched her in the stomach without any warning. He didn't hold back and seemed to have hit her with quite a bit of force. Emily was in a lot of pain, holding her stomach.
She's only 4 years old. How can you be so cruel? Don't you think about how others feel?
I couldn't stay silent after seeing my daughter hurt like this. So I scolded him sternly. But then, Michael turned his anger towards me.
Shut up. You're not even my real mom. Stop acting all high and mighty.
With that, he shoved me away. Michael tends to lash out physically when something upsets him. Even towards me, a woman. I could tolerate it if it were just me, but I can't forgive him hurting Emily. Since talking to Michael didn't work, I decided to discuss this with my husband. When my husband got home and I brought up Michael's behavior, he looked visibly upset.
Complaining about Michael again?
You always favor your own daughter.
It's because of your attitude that Michael acts out.
I understand that no parent likes to hear their child criticized. But in this situation, Michael was clearly in the wrong. I pleaded with my husband to talk to Michael, as nothing I said seemed to matter. But my husband just seemed annoyed.
Why do I have to lecture him?
I'm tired from work.
Michael hit a 4-year-old girl. Isn't it normal to scold him for that?
Maybe Michael had his reasons for hitting her. It's not fair to blame only him.
What reason could there be? He was taking pictures of Emily crying, for fun. That's crossing a line. And for Michael's future, he needs to be disciplined now, or he might end up in real trouble.
Stop nagging. It's Emily's fault for provoking Michael. I get that you love your own daughter more, but blaming Michael is wrong. It's actually my husband who always favors his own child. Whenever something comes up, my husband always prioritizes Michael. Even when we talk about going out to eat, he never listens to Emily's opinion and only cares about what Michael wants. It seems like Emily has her grievances, but she always keeps them to herself. I guess she's scared of getting scolded by my husband and Michael if she speaks up. The image of Emily's sad face comes to my mind, and I feel my emotions rising.
If we're going to keep living together, you need to discipline Michael properly. You say I only dote on my daughter, but isn't that what you're doing? Emily is always being forced to hold back. I wish you'd think about her a bit more. What? What did you just say?
I could see that my words had made my husband even angrier. While we were arguing, Emily came over. Probably worried about what was happening. What's going on? Mom, are you guys fighting?
I'm sorry for scaring you.
Damn, what an annoying kid. I can see why Michael wants to hit her.
What? What are you saying in front of Emily?
Well, it's true, isn't it? She always starts crying over nothing and never warms up to us.
That's because you've never opened your heart to Emily.
Man, I shouldn't have married a divorced woman with a kid. I felt something break inside me at my husband's words. I just can't go on with this person anymore. That's what I was certain of. Leave right now.
What?
I'm fed up with you guys. Let's just get a divorce.
Don't get mad. It's her fault she gets hit. You always take your daughter's side. Try being a good kid for once.
My husband said this to Emily. She looked like she was about to cry. I had reached my limit. We're getting a divorce. This is the end for us.
What? Are you serious?
Yes, I am.
You think you can divorce me? You can't live without my income.
I'm serious. I can't do this with you guys anymore. Fine by me. Just seeing your faces irritates me. It'll be a relief to get divorced. Saying that, my husband left, laughing loudly. He showed no sense of crisis. Later, I signed the divorce papers I had prepared earlier and submitted them to the court. These papers were actually prepared by my husband. Whenever he was unhappy with something, he would threaten divorce. If you're gonna keep complaining, I'll just divorce you. I only asked you to discipline Michael. Why does it have to come to divorce? It's because you keep making Michael out to be the bad guy. I was just saying it's not good for Michael's upbringing to keep going like this. He's out at night, causing trouble at school. That's why you're so annoying. Sign here, and I'll submit it to the court. This was how my husband had threatened me, showing me the filled-out divorce papers. I think I lost any love for my husband about a year after we got married. But I stayed because I wasn't ready to leave yet. I didn't just file for divorce. I also filed a report for the harm done to Emily. When I talked to Emily, it turned out that she had been hit by Michael many times when I wasn't around. Emily had been threatened by Michael that he'd hurt her badly if she told me, so she never reported it. There were also several injuries on her body caused by Michael. Additionally, Emily had the habit of keeping a daily diary. She had meticulously recorded the instances when Michael hit her. I submitted this diary to the police. That evening, my husband and Michael, unaware of everything, came home as usual. They expected, as if it were the most normal thing, that I would prepare dinner for them.
Hey, haven't you prepared dinner yet? I'm tired from work, you know?
Yeah, hurry up and get it ready. You're such a useless mom. As usual, the two of them vented their dissatisfaction at me. Before, I would have reluctantly started cooking for them, but not anymore.
Hey, you don't belong here anymore, okay? We're strangers now, so could you please not just walk in like you own the place?
What are you talking about?
This is our home too. Just get the dinner ready already. Look, I told you I'm divorcing you, remember? Or did you forget?
Then my husband began to laugh mockingly, with Michael joining in.
What's so funny?
That's probably just a bluff, right? You, a stay-at-home mom, divorcing me? How would you even live without me? You can't manage a decent life without me. Really, you and your daughter are just leeches on Dad. It's sad that he had to support people who aren't even his own family. They clearly didn't understand their situation at all. I decided it was time to inform them of the reality. I submitted the divorce papers today. So we're strangers now. You funny. My husband was reluctant to believe, which only increased my irritation. But I responded calmly, without getting emotional. Do you think I'm joking about this? If you think it's a lie, go check with the office. We're strangers now.
Hey, are you serious?
I've been saying that. It seemed he finally believed me. His face, which had looked so smug before, suddenly paled.
But how are you going to live as a stay-at-home mom? You're not expecting me to raise 2 kids on my own, are you? Of course, I'll take care of Emily. I have no intention of relying on you in the future, so don't worry. What? You have no income. How will you survive? Are you and your daughter going to be homeless? Don't worry about money. I have a job now that pays as much as a company employee. What? What are you talking about? You don't work, do you? No, I do. Actually, I've been working from home. I've been saving up, just in case something like this happened.
Hearing that I had been working, my husband was visibly shocked. I started working from home as a web designer about a year ago. With nearly a decade of experience in a web production company, I had the necessary skills. At first, my earnings were just pocket money, but after landing a big project, I now earn as much as my husband. I had quit my job a few months after we got married. At his insistence. He never imagined I could earn this much. He was speechless for a moment.
So you've been secretly working behind my back? I had to protect Emily. Plus, I didn't want to depend on you for the rest of my life. What? It's like you were planning to divorce me from the start. When I first met you, I thought your assertive personality was manly and good. But after marrying, I realized it was different. You're always selfish, and you raise your voice whenever something doesn't go your way. I guess Michael picked up that trait from you. What?
My husband was clearly displeased, but I didn't care and continued. I used to be concerned about his mood, but not anymore. Then I turned to Michael.
What do you want? I've reported to the police what you did to Emily. The report has been accepted, so please make sure to pay for your actions. Police!
Michael was clearly shaken by the mention of the police. Even he was afraid of them.
You really filed a report?
He asked in a trembling voice. I nodded firmly in response.
But I only punched her in the stomach, right? That can't be enough to involve the police. Everything you've done to Emily has been revealed. She's been keeping a diary of everything that's happened. Plus, there are marks on her body that you caused.
She's told me everything. Then Michael looked down and clicked his tongue. Emily isn't here. I didn't want her involved in our conversation, so I left her with my parents.
Damn her! Telling unnecessary things. It seems you threatened her, saying if she told me, you'd hurt me too. She didn't want me to get hurt, so she kept quiet. Unlike you, Emily is a considerate child.
I may have been harsh, but I spoke my mind. Then Michael looked at me with pleading eyes.
Please, anything but the police. I don't know what they'll say at school if this gets out.
No, I will not forgive you.
Why not? I'm part of your family, aren't I?
What are you saying now?
Sorry, but I don't think of you as my son. And I'm divorcing this man anyway. From now on, we're nothing to each other.
Saying this, I coldly dismissed Michael. Then Michael looked down and began to cry softly. Ignoring him, I continued speaking to my husband.
So, as promised, please leave this house. You don't belong here anymore. What are you talking about? This house is mine. You're the ones who should leave.
I couldn't help but laugh at my husband's words. Apparently, he had forgotten something important.
What's so funny? You're mistaken thinking this house is yours. What? This house is definitely mine. Don't be ridiculous. This house is in my name, remember? What?
My husband's mouth fell open in shock. He went silent for a while, his face turning pale as he remembered.
You might have left the contract to me, but we agreed to change it to your name later, right? We talked about it, but you said you didn't want to deal with the paperwork and told me to leave it in my name. Forgot that too? So this house is still in your name? Yes, I've been saying that. I've been paying most of the rent anyway. You can't complain if I keep it, right?
My husband fell silent. We've been living in an apartment with a rent of about $4,000. For about half a year after we got married, my husband paid it, but then he stopped contributing much to our living expenses, and I had to pay. I wasn't working at the time, so I had to dip into my savings to get by. I asked him to contribute to the living expenses, but he refused. And even got angry and lashed out at things, so I couldn't press him further. Realizing the house wasn't his, my husband began to show obvious signs of distress.
So if the house is in your name, we're the ones who have to leave, right?
That's right. I've been paying most of the rent, after all.
So, what if we don't get divorced, then?
What? He had been the one to push the divorce papers at me, and now he was changing his tune. I was appalled at my husband's sudden shift in attitude. It seemed there was a reason he didn't want the divorce.
Please! I can't afford to divorce you right now.
Why?
Weren't you the one who said you were ready to dump me anytime? Yeah, but I'm in trouble now.
What do you mean?
Actually, I don't have much money right now.
My husband murmured this. Then he began to reveal something he had never told me before.
I didn't tell you, but about 6 months after we got married, my salary was cut. Now, it's only about 2/3 of what it was when we first got married.
Why did your salary get cut? He turned away, seeming to find it hard to answer. From his reaction, it seemed like he had caused some kind of problem. My guess was right. Apparently, he made a mistake at work that was bad enough to get him fired, and his salary was cut as a result. He somehow managed to avoid being fired after convincing the company. Even with a 2/3 salary, he was still earning more than most people his age. But the reason he had no money was that he was pouring his earnings into gambling. He used gambling to relieve stress from work. There were times he won, but more often, he lost, and his savings were nearly depleted. That must have been why he stopped contributing to the household. He had no money left due to gambling. Now it all made sense.
I understand that you don't have money, but I still have no intention of staying with you. I've already submitted the divorce papers. We can just submit the marriage papers again, right?
What's the point for me to stay with you?
I'd get nothing but a violent stepson who hurts my daughter. Hey, stop saying bad things about Michael. He's hurting too.
Michael was sitting nearby, crying. Seeing him like that didn't affect me. Emily had suffered much more than him. It might sound harsh, but I wish Michael would suffer a lot more. You always take your son's side.
Well, yeah, Michael is my real son.
Then it's only fair for me to side with my real daughter, right? To protect Emily, I'll cut ties with you. Please, never bother us again. I spoke firmly, but my husband seemed unable to accept it. Then he started saying this.
Did you tell our parents about the divorce? I bet my dad and mom won't agree.
My parents agree with the decision, and I've already informed your parents. They even apologized on your behalf.
No way!
He couldn't believe it. But it was true. I had already informed my in-laws. Fortunately, they are reasonable people. When I told them about the situation at home, they deeply apologized. They said they had no right to oppose our divorce and agreed with it. However, my husband still didn't want to believe it.
There's no way my parents would agree. They were so happy about our marriage.
Why don't you check with them then? He seemed unsure about it. And hesitated. So, we're divorcing, right? There's a matter of packing your things. I'll give you a week, so please leave soon.
Wait. Let me confirm with my parents first. I can't accept this.
Suit yourself. Then he started calling his parents. My mother-in-law answered the phone. And was cold towards him. I could hear her voice too.
You really agreed to our divorce?
Yes, we did. Continuing this marriage would only make Erica and Emily suffer. In fact, we were the ones who suggested the divorce.
No way! They were so happy about our marriage.
Sure, we were happy then. But who knew you would turn out to be such a terrible husband, neglecting to contribute to the household and constantly complaining to Erica. And you never reprimanded Michael for hurting Emily.
But Emily's not my real daughter.
You married Erica, right? Then you should have treated her precious daughter Emily equally. But I guess whatever I say now won't make a difference to you. My mother-in-law is usually a calm and kind person. She had always been like that towards my husband too. He must not have expected such a cold response from her. He was visibly shaken.
I hope you understand, but your father and I intend to cut ties with you. We have no desire to associate with Michael, who hurt Emily, so please don't come back here again. Are you serious? Do you think I would joke about something like this? You have no right to stop the divorce, so to avoid any more trouble, please leave quickly. That's all I have to say. Goodbye. With that, my mother-in-law unilaterally ended the call. After that, my still unsatisfied husband tried to call my in-laws several times, but they ignored him. It seemed they had even blocked his number on their cell phones. My husband, now abandoned by his own parents, slumped down, seemingly out of his senses. Then, Michael began to speak. His eyes were red and swollen with tears. Please, don't tell the police. I was having a hard time at school and I took it out on Emily. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't help myself.
Michael, tearfully, began to explain his feelings. The reason he had been harassing Emily was due to stress at school. Despite his flashy appearance and behaving like a delinquent, it seemed Michael was completely ignored by his schoolmates. He was supposedly part of a certain delinquent group, but even they didn't really consider him a friend and just used him. Michael was lonely, having no real friends and always feeling isolated. He told me all this while crying.
But that doesn't change the fact that you hurt Emily, does it? Just because you were hurt doesn't mean you can hurt others, right?
Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him easily. Michael probably thought he would be forgiven if he told the truth. His eyes filled with even more tears.
I'm really sorry. I won't ever hurt Emily again. If this gets out at school, I'll lose whatever place I have left. I can't bear to be hurt anymore.
So it's only you who shouldn't be hurt? It's okay to do whatever you want to others?
Of course, I'm sorry, but please, not the police.
I'm sorry, but I will never forgive you.
The police are already on their way, so be prepared for questioning. No, no.
Michael collapsed to the ground, crying loudly. Then, my husband spoke up again.
Please, spare him from the police. He didn't mean any harm.
So if there's no ill intent, it's okay to punch a small child? To scratch with your nails? To pull hair?
No, I didn't mean that.
My husband was overwhelmed by my assertiveness. I used to be someone who just followed what he said. But not anymore. At that time, I was more assertive than I had ever been before.
From now on, please never show your face in front of us again. If you try to contact us, I'll immediately call the police. Do you really hate me that much?
My husband asked in a trembling voice. His eyes were also red. I despise you.
Just looking at your face fills me with revulsion.
I told him this clearly, and he began to cry.
What did I do wrong?
Not knowing the reason is exactly why it's over. You two just go on and live your lives. Emily and I will be happy together. My husband, who had always been overbearing to me, seemed truly shocked by the word hate. As we were having this conversation, the police arrived at the house. It seemed they came for an investigation. Then, we underwent questioning by the police. Michael was just crying and couldn't really talk, so I spoke on his behalf and told them everything. Of course, I proceeded with the divorce. I demanded compensation from Michael for injuring Emily. Naturally, Michael had no money to pay, so my ex-husband ended up bearing the cost. The compensation forced my ex-husband into debt. Even so, his gambling habit didn't change and his debts snowballed. Eventually, debt collectors came to his workplace, and he decided to quit his job. He then started working part-time, barely scraping by. As for Michael, the fact that he had hurt Emily spread around the school, and he became even more isolated. Unable to attend school, he began living a reclusive life at home. With no friends, Michael must be leading a lonely existence. Of course, I feel no sympathy for them. In fact, I feel relieved that they are getting their just desserts. On the other hand, I moved out of the apartment with Emily to a different place. I didn't want to continue living in a place filled with memories of them. Since Emily and I started living alone, she has been showing more smiles. Seeing Emily happy gives me peace of mind. I intend to continue protecting my precious daughter. My baby was born. For the baby shower, please gift us $10,000. What? Startled by Catherine's carefree tone, I couldn't help but speak out loud. It had been years since I last spoke with Catherine. After what happened. Despite that, her wanting me to celebrate is just crazy. When I shared this with my husband, Nigel, he surprisingly suggested, let's both go and give the baby shower gift. This was absurd. But Nigel seemed to have a plan. So, I agreed to go with him to Catherine's house. It was a reunion with Catherine after such a long time. We greeted her with smiles. Congratulations on your baby, Catherine. Here's our gift for you. Nigel said, handing her a piece of paper with a smile. Catherine's face turned pale the moment she saw it. What is this? Catherine turned pale. We meet again, Miss Catherine Jones. Nigel said as he removed his hat and smirked. Seeing Nigel clearly, Catherine's eyes widened in shock. You are... She then started trembling pitifully. I'm Margaret Harris. Just turned 30. My husband, Nigel, is 35. And we have a 4-year-old daughter, Susan. We live together as a family of 3. Our life is ordinary and peaceful, but it wasn't always smooth sailing. This is my second marriage. My first marriage was about 5 years ago. Susan is my daughter with my ex-husband, Simon. Simon remarried too. To my sister, Catherine. Catherine is a year younger than me, 29. Given our close ages, we should have remained reasonably close even as adults. However, I haven't been in contact with Catherine for a long time. After what happened, it's understandable. People unaware of the situation often say things like, sisterly fight? Make up soon. But what Catherine did to me isn't something I can just let go of easily. What happened between us sisters? There were complex circumstances involved. As kids, Catherine and I were just like any other sisters. The change started when Catherine entered middle school. She realized she was pretty. She became interested in fashion, hairstyles, and started dieting. Her studies took a back seat. Catherine often got scolded by our parents and teachers. And my existence was a pressure for her. Not to brag, but I was good at academics. Which made her even more irritable when compared to me. I did my best to support her. I asked our parents not to be too hard on Catherine and even helped her with her studies at times. But it seems like things you're not interested in just don't stick. Her grades didn't improve, and Catherine dove deeper into beauty and fashion. She even started doing makeup and became a reader model for magazines by the time she was in high school. Catherine's social circle became quite flashy. Yet, she still looked up to me. Margaret, top of your class again? You're so smart, I really admire you. I brag about you to all my friends. She would say, always speaking kindly of me. Eventually, I got into a prestigious university. A year later, Catherine went to a beauty school. It was around that time when something happened that made me suspicious. I was at a cafe near the train station, working on an assignment, when I heard a familiar voice. It was Catherine and her friends. I remember she mentioned using this cafe sometimes. I felt awkward but decided to stay, as they couldn't see me from where they were sitting. After a while, one of Catherine's friends said, "Isn't this cafe near the university your sister goes, right?" She must be really smart. What Catherine said next was unbelievable. "Oh, you mean that plain, nerdy loser?" I couldn't believe my ears. But it was undoubtedly Catherine's voice. Wow, Catherine, that's harsh. Are you guys not close? Not really. We just get along on the surface. She doesn't care about fashion, just buries herself in books all day. She looks so dorky. I'd hate to run into her in town. She's always studying hard, getting praised by teachers and parents, so she must be happy, even if she looks dorky. Catherine laughed. I was frozen, shocked and angry at what I had heard. After that, I returned home quite late. Catherine was acting as usual when I got home late. "Welcome back, Margaret. You're late. Were you studying at the library again? You're such a hard worker." I was confused. Which one was the real Catherine? I didn't have the courage to confront her about what I heard. So, we continued on as if nothing had changed. But I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. After graduating, I decided to move out when I got a job, reducing my contact with Catherine. Time passed, and I turned 25. I was about to marry Simon Jones, a classmate from university. We reconnected at an alumni meeting and hit it off. Simon worked for a regular company, but his family owned a lot of land in prime city locations, making them quite wealthy. However, that wasn't why I was drawn to him. It was his generous nature that attracted me. Before the wedding, I went home to introduce Simon to my family. Catherine was there, of course. She had become an esthetician, clearly very conscious about her beauty. Her makeup, style, and fashion were impeccable, just like a model. I was initially tense, but Catherine celebrated my news with the same untroubled laughter as before. My heart gradually warmed to her. Maybe back then, she was just a frustrated teenager. Time has passed, and we've all grown up. That's what I convinced myself of. Due to our closeness in age, Simon, Catherine, and I quickly became good friends. Sometimes, the three of us would even hang out together. If Catherine and I remained awkward, it would have worried Simon too. It turned out to be a good thing. After marrying Simon, I soon became pregnant. I had decided to go back to my parents' place for the birth. So, I consulted with them and started visiting a nearby hospital. It was a busy time. I had severe morning sickness and had to be hospitalized for a while. My parents visited, but I rarely saw Simon and Catherine. But I was too sick to worry about that. I had no energy to worry about what was going on around me. In hindsight, I wish I had been more observant then. If I had, I might have noticed something. And then, I went into labor. I gave birth to a healthy baby girl, Susan. But my health didn't recover quickly. So I stayed at my parents' for a bit longer. Simon, busy with work, hardly visited, leaving us to communicate mainly through emails and phone calls. Gradually, I got better, and was ready to return to the home where Simon was waiting. I wondered what he would say when he saw the baby. With such thoughts, I opened the door. "Simon, I'm home." No response. I opened the living room door, and to my shock, there was Simon and Catherine, in a compromising situation. "What?" I was speechless. Simon hurriedly dressed, but Catherine seemed oddly calm. "What's going on?" "Margaret! This is a misunderstanding." "Welcome back, Margaret," Catherine said with a sly smile. "What do you mean, welcome back? Explain this." "What's there to explain? You see what's going on. We're in a relationship," Catherine said nonchalantly, wrapping her arm around Simon. My head was spinning. What was Catherine talking about? Simon seemed resigned and apologized. "Sorry. I can't believe this. It's unbelievable, both of you. Susan and I are right here, and you're doing this." Confused and upset, I ran out of the house. But I had nowhere else to go. Reluctantly, I decided to take Susan back to my parents' house. While I was explaining the situation to them, my phone rang. It was Simon. "Sorry for startling you earlier, Margaret. But I've fallen for Catherine. I want a divorce." "What? What are you talking about? We have Susan." "I'll pay child support." "So?" I couldn't make sense of it. I listened to Simon in confusion. Why did he get involved with Catherine? He said he thought Catherine was cute when he first saw her. But she's my sister, his sister-in-law. We became close as a family. Then, I was hospitalized for morning sickness. That's when they grew closer. Catherine had tearfully confessed to Simon that I had always been mean to her, calling her stupid. I had never said such awful things. Clearly, Catherine was lying. But Simon believed her. He had his own insecurities too. He had gotten into university through a large donation from his wealthy family. Essentially a backdoor admission. He hadn't gotten into the prestigious university on his own merit. He felt complex about this, especially compared to me, who got in through regular admission. With this background, Simon empathized with Catherine, believing her story and becoming disappointed in me. You're smart and reliable, sure. But that's no reason to look down on Catherine. I'm disappointed in you. Marrying such a mean and nasty woman was a mistake. What are you saying? That's a lie by Catherine. Don't believe it. No, I won't be fooled. I'll sign the divorce papers and mail them to you. Wait, listen to me. My pleas were in vain, he hung up. I couldn't believe he'd fall for such a lie. I was stunned. A few days later, overwhelmed by everything, I came down with a fever. My parents, who knew everything, comforted me and took care of Susan. It was humiliating. I needed to recover quickly and fix this situation. As I was thinking this, the front door opened. I thought it was someone else, but when I came out of my room, it was Catherine. Oh, Margaret, you're here? Catherine spoke nonchalantly as soon as she returned. I couldn't contain my anger. What are you saying? What do you mean, Catherine? Lying and deceiving Simon like this? I yelled. Hearing the commotion, my parents rushed in to calm us down. But we didn't stop. I've always hated you, Margaret. Catherine said in a lower tone than usual, speaking slowly. I couldn't stand that you, just for being good at studies, received all the attention and love. That's why I wanted to take away something important from you. The house fell silent upon Catherine's confession. I couldn't believe she had such thoughts. Anyway, I'm glad I focused on beauty. Simon's just a regular guy, fell for me easily. Catherine spoke with a smile. I was speechless. So, the Catherine I saw in that cafe was her true self. What had I been seeing all this time? The real Catherine hated me so much, yet all I saw was the convenient illusion of a sister who admired me. As I stood there dazed, Catherine grabbed her things to leave. Simon's house, with your plain and nerdy interior, isn't to my taste. I'm going to change it. Apparently, she planned to stay at Simon's house. My parents tried to stop her, but Catherine left swiftly. I felt dizzy and had to sit down in the hallway. Then I heard my daughter, Susan, crying in the back room. I knew I had to comfort her, but I couldn't move. My parents helped me stand up. I don't remember much after that. I just didn't want to see Catherine and Simon's faces. After talking with my parents, we concluded that divorce was the only way forward. I cried. Not for myself, but for Susan. Simon didn't care about her at all. What a terrible father. But maybe it's better not to have such a father. That thought was one of the reasons I decided on the divorce. I quickly signed the divorce papers that were mailed to me and took them to the office. Thus, my first marriage ended unceremoniously. Fortunately, my parents were on my side. They harshly told Catherine not to come back home. Thankfully, I never had to see Catherine again. Slowly, I regained my composure. Catherine and Simon apparently got married, but I didn't care anymore. My focus was on Susan and our life. Time passed. Luckily, my job was within commuting distance from my parents' house, so I didn't have to change jobs. I threw myself into my work. The alimony was paid regularly, but as a single mother, I needed to save as much as I could. I was a bit anxious. Maybe that's why people around me were worried. One day, a friend said she wanted to introduce me to a man she knew. I hesitated at first, but she said he was a sincere person, so I agreed to meet him. His name was Nigel Harris. He was 5 years older than me, tall and well-built. Contrary to his intimidating appearance, he was surprisingly serious and kind. He had been so focused on his work that he hadn't had much experience with women. We were naturally drawn to each other. Susan warmed up to him when the three of us went out together. One day, Nigel said he wanted to protect Susan and me from now on. I was moved to tears by his words. We got married. And now we're living a simple but happy life as a family of three. I thought I had no more ties with Catherine. But then one day, while relaxing at home, my phone rang. I instinctively answered it. Hey, Margaret, how are you? Hearing Catherine's voice on the other end, I felt a chill. I should have checked the screen before answering. Too late for regrets now. What do you want? I replied, trying to sound as cold as possible. I didn't want my peaceful life disturbed anymore. Then Catherine cheerfully said, I had a baby. For the baby shower, please gift us $10,000. What? After years of no contact, this was absurd. Especially asking for $10,000. I was outraged, but Catherine kept talking, oblivious to my feelings. She continued being an esthetician and had opened her own salon about 3 years ago. She got the land and building for her shop from Simon's parents, in a prime location. She boasted about how successful it was. Just showing off. I quickly ended the call, disgusted by her self-centeredness. Unbelievable. How could she dare call me after everything? I was still fuming. When Nigel came home late that night. He's been busy with work recently. But always makes sure to have dinner at home, valuing our communication as a couple. He's always said since our remarriage, I want you to talk about everything. Over dinner, Nigel said. What? You got a call from that sister of yours? She's running a salon now? Seems like it. She got help from my ex-husband, who was quite wealthy. What's her name now? Catherine. Catherine Jones. After I answered, Nigel paused for a moment, then said, I see, that explains it. What? What's up? Well, how about we both go and give a baby shower gift to Catherine's place? Nigel suggested with a mischievous smile. What? Why? I don't want to do that. Just trust me, I have a plan. Later, Nigel shared a fact and a proposal with me. I was shocked by what I heard. When the weekend came, after leaving Susan with my parents, Nigel and I arrived at Catherine's house. It was a large, impressive house. Welcome. Catherine greeted us at the door. Looking perfect despite having recently given birth. It's been a while. You haven't changed, Catherine. I said, forcing a smile. Then, Catherine said with a smirk. Of course. I never neglect my beauty routines, unlike someone else who got cheated on. Catherine was just being Catherine. I was irritated but kept my composure for now. She led us to her spacious living room. A baby was sleeping in a crib. Look, this is my daughter, Maria. Cute, isn't she? Maria indeed looked just like Catherine, though her features seemed a bit sharp. Maybe it was just my imagination. So, about that thing? Catherine gestured for money with her hand. How brazen can she get? Just as I was about to retort, Nigel put his hand on my shoulder. Nice to meet you. I'm Margaret's husband, Nigel. He said, with his hat pulled down over his eyes. Oh, hello. Catherine muttered, uninterested. Nigel then swiftly pulled out a piece of paper. This is our gift for the baby shower. Congratulations, Catherine. Catherine's face turned pale the moment she saw the paper. What is this? She exclaimed, going white. Nigel then promptly took off his hat. Nice to meet you again, Miss Catherine Jones. I'm Nigel Harris from the Metropolitan Police Department. Recognizing Nigel, Catherine's eyes widened in shock. You, the detective who visited my salon? She started trembling. The baby shower gift Nigel had given was actually a search warrant. It was permission from the court to search and seize property at her home. Catherine was visibly shaken. It turned out she had been committing fraud at her aesthetic salon, tricking customers into buying dubious products with false promises of guaranteed weight loss. and signing them up for expensive and ineffective treatment plans without proper explanation. She kept repeating such actions. Despite initial warnings from consumer protection agencies, Catherine didn't listen. And the situation worsened, with more victims. And even more aggressive tactics like forcing contracts and filling out application forms without consent. Multiple complaints were filed, prompting the police to raid her salon. Nigel was the officer in charge. Nigel's profession is a police officer. However, Catherine had cleverly hidden evidence at her salon, making it difficult for the police to catch her. This was why Nigel had been coming home late lately. Coincidentally, the investigation target turned out to be my sister. Catherine's call about the baby shower gave Nigel a reason to visit her home. Fearing that going as a police officer might raise her guard, he decided to use the baby shower visit to his advantage. Thus, Nigel kept his identity hidden until the last moment, successfully entering Catherine's house. As soon as Nigel signaled over the radio, other officers who were waiting outside entered the house. "Sorry, but we wouldn't have been let in otherwise." Then, Simon arrived. "What's all this commotion? What's going on, Catherine?" Catherine could only groan in response, unable to answer Simon's pressing questions. The police officers entered various parts of the house, seizing all sorts of items in cardboard boxes. As Simon gradually understood the situation, he questioned Catherine more intensely, seemingly oblivious to my presence. In a panic, Catherine suddenly lunged at one of the officers who had entered the house. "Stop it! Don't mess up our house without permission!" she yelled. Nigel raised his voice. "Don't interfere! I'll arrest you for obstructing public duty." Hearing the word arrest, Catherine let go, a look of frustration on her face. But she wasn't one to give up easily, and glared sharply at Nigel. "I'll tell Simon's father, Daniel. He knows plenty of police officials. He can cover up anything like this." Catherine mentioned the name of Simon's wealthy father, Daniel Jones, who indeed had a wide network and many acquaintances among powerful figures. It made sense that Catherine was counting on him. Catherine turned to Simon and shouted, "You can do it, right? Your father can. He's always been donating money to various places to get favors done." "Hey! What are you saying in front of the police?" Simon was flustered. Catherine, too agitated to think clearly about her words, blurted out everything. Nigel spoke calmly. "The Jones family. The long-standing landlords. Daniel Jones, Simon's father, and a former city council member, quite a wealthy man." So what? What about it? He's already been indicted for bribery in a corruption case. He's currently in custody." "What? My father?" Now it was Simon's turn to be thrown into disarray. The Jones family, despite their wealth, seemed to be mired in corruption. Simon's backdoor university admission suggested a tendency to solve everything with money. "Why is your father involved in such a thing?" "I don't know. But Catherine, you were committing fraud at your salon?" "Shut up, not now." The two began a heated argument. Amidst the chaos, I calmly addressed Catherine. "Why don't you just accept it? It's embarrassing." "What did you say?" "You lied again. For years ago, you fabricated stories about me to Simon, trampling on my heart. And now, you're deceiving your customers for your own gain. No matter how beautiful you are, your heart is ugly, the lowest of the low." "You!" As Catherine opened her mouth to retort, a police officer's voice came from the back room. "We found the business computer." "Damn. Likely, that computer contained the evidence." Catherine bit her lip in frustration. "Catherine Jones, let's continue this discussion at the police station. Please come with us." Catherine's face fell in despair, seemingly out of energy to resist. When brought to the station, Catherine initially denied the fraud charges. However, when the data on the computer was analyzed, evidence was found. Catherine was arrested. The charges were extensive, including fraud, coercion, and forgery of private documents. Catherine's salon, opened about 3 years ago, had apparently been in the red from the start. She had aggressively promoted products to secure even a little revenue. But she didn't want anyone to know about her dire financial situation. Having boasted about opening the salon, she felt compelled to claim it was thriving. Her sudden demand for $10,000 from me was likely just a desperate attempt to cover the salon's deficits under the guise of a baby shower gift. The number of victims who filed complaints against Catherine was in the dozens. Her salon sank further into debt due to liability for damages and eventually closed, leading to bankruptcy. Simon and his family, who had invested capital, were furious. And Simon naturally divorced Catherine. But Simon's household was no longer secure either. Simon's father, Daniel Jones, had also been arrested for bribery. Simon's family was scrambling for money and had to let go of all the land they owned. Simon originally worked at the real estate company run by his father. However, with his father's arrest, the company's control shifted to executives outside the Jones family. Simon was forced out of the company. He later found a job at a completely unrelated company through his connections. But it seems he is now struggling with demanding, low-paid work and having a hard time adjusting to the unfamiliar job. In such a state, he was obviously unable to take care of a child. Maria, the daughter of Catherine and Simon, was temporarily placed in a child welfare facility. It was unfortunate that Maria was born into such a family. As I reflected on the tumultuous days, I realized something. Months later, I attended Catherine's trial to see if she had shown any remorse. It felt like my final duty as her sister. But reality was not so kind. In court, Catherine kept repeating, "I'm not wrong," denying all the evidence of fraud. "I only helped the customers who wanted to lose weight and be beautiful," she argued. Her face was marked with dark circles. And her hair was unkempt, the once meticulously maintained beauty was nowhere to be seen. It seemed her lifestyle had finally taken its toll on her appearance. Catherine looked truly pitiful. I watched Catherine and thought back on everything that had happened. It all started with her jealousy of me. But I had never said anything mean to her. Our parents, initially upset with Catherine's lack of interest in studies, eventually stopped scolding her. Catherine had let her own complex feelings distort her perspective. Over time, she began lying casually. These lies continued, eventually becoming her own truth over the real facts. Now, Catherine is just continually looking away from reality. She's fabricating twisted facts, not thinking for a second that she's in the wrong. And this is the result. Poor Catherine. Eventually, the verdict was given. Due to the severity of her actions, she received a 3-year prison sentence without probation. It was only to be expected. Yet, I can't help but hope she will come to her senses. I wish she would consider, even a little, the pain of those who suffered because of her lies. I hope she can take a good, hard look at herself while in prison. Months later, on a certain holiday, Susan, Nigel, and I were at the park. We spread out a picnic on the grass, enjoying a light picnic atmosphere. "Let's eat sandwiches quickly. I want the tuna one." "Hey, Susan, leave some for your dad," Nigel said, and Susan laughed happily. We were back to our happy, normal life. Thinking back, the family I grew up in was also a peaceful one like this at first. If there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's that I'm not perfect either. I have moments of envy too. But rather than hurting someone with petty jealousy, I want to cherish feelings of compassion for others and focus on the small joys of everyday life. That way, I won't be consumed by negative emotions. Watching Susan and Nigel happily eating their sandwiches, I silently wished for these peaceful days to last forever.